Michael, how's it going?
I'm good. Jared, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Where the name came from? That's always my first thing I tend to ask people where the name came from. And also, if someone was walking up to you on the street, what do you tell them if they see you in a cardless sweatshirt, right? As kind of the pitch. What does that sound like? Let's start with there, and then we'll dig into the business.
Yeah. So my name's Michael Spelfogel. I'm the founder and president of Cardless. We're a 5-year-old payments company, and we help brands launch and scale credit cards. Today, we work with major airlines like Qatar Airways. We're launching a program with Simon Property Group with Alibaba. Happy to talk more about that as well. Where did the name Cardless come from? It's a great question. We do offer physical credit cards, and I've actually got a bunch of them in my wallet here. I'll show you what they look like. So contrary to popular belief, Cardless does have physical cards, right? There's still plastic metal cards. There's physical manifestations of the brand is important today, but the name Cardless is a homage to the future. We think that people will always need to borrow money or access to credit. They'll want rewards, but the physical manifestation of a credit card, we think, is going to change in the next few years. Digital payments, mobile wallets, push provisioning, QR codes, payment via other rails, we think is going to happen in the future. And cardless is meant to be a bit provocative, evoking that future that doesn't exist yet.
Now, you're probably tired of hearing this question at this point, but a question I often hear, right? Because we covered, we put out something when you had the Alibaba news, which we'll go into shortly. But people always are like, okay, who can create their own card? Like, what is required to be able to have your own card? Are there a certain number of members? Like, how big does your organization have to be? Would love to hear that information from you, and then we can dig into some of these recent announcements.
Awesome. Yeah. So who can have a credit card? Well, first of all, there's about 200 co-brand cards in the market today. The big airlines, the big retailers, they're pretty prominent examples. A stat that's crazy I read a little while ago is 1% of US GDP last year was spent on a Delta American Express card. So the scale of these programs is immense. It can't be understated. But one of the goals of Cardless is to expand the scale and relevance of co-branded cards to more brands than the ones that just have it today. And there are two key qualities that we look for as we think about whether and how a brand should effectuate and use a credit card product or program. The first is, do they have a loyalty program? So if there's a consumer brand that has existing customer touch points and has created an interactive loyalty program, that's a great potential use case. Airlines and hotels are probably the canonical example of this, of course. But then there's another quality we look for, and that is frequency. It's a brand that people interact with every day, every week, every month on some sort of, recurring basis. Costco, Amazon, these are really clear examples in the market of this. And I'd argue Alibaba is actually another example of a brand that a lot of small businesses in the US interact with and buy from every week or every month.
Now, let's let's say there's a company that is growing. They sell, let's say, like the companies that sell the restaurant supplies, right?
Mhm.
Just as an example, are they able to also set what the rewards look like? So let's say the restaurant supply company launches a card. You say it looks good.
Mhm.
And now all the restaurants that work with them are going to get like a card dedicated to buying stuff from them and then all their restaurant supplies. Would there be a way for them to actually be able to say, like, if it's spent on these certain things, you get certain reward points, or is it like baked in to the point where it's your typical travel or food spend, but it's not on a specific thing? That's something I've always wondered when I see these custom cards.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the reason you see pretty unimaginative card products today is because a lot of them are built by banks that have a pretty, legacy mindset and don't push the envelope or innovate. The approach we've taken is quite the contrary, actually. So we pass a fixed value to all of our partners, usually about 2% of the transaction. And then our partners can choose how to divvy up that pool of value. Sometimes it's in category bonuses. Sometimes it's giving benefits with the airlines. It could be elite status, upgrades, different discounts in their ecosystem. And I think the fundamental value we've created is a platform that's really agile that can do really cool things like geo-targeted rewards or benefits that unlock with certain spending milestones and hurdles. And I think in the next few years, you'll see more and more innovation on the reward side because we believe that in the future, people and small businesses also are going to want rewards and products that are much more bespoke and catered to who they are and relevant to their lives.
Yeah, I'd say like the some of the most innovation we've seen with cards over the last couple years is I've seen more cards, even just the general consumer card, right? That started offering points for Ubers and Lyfts, like actually in the writing,
Mhm.
right? Like that was for the longest time that wasn't a thing. So it's interesting to see. So you think we'll continue to get creative with the different types of rewards that we end up getting? Like if you spend X on this, you get points. Like do you think we'll end up seeing that more?
Yeah, and we've launched 14 different credit cards to date. So we've done this a bunch of times. And a question I get a lot from investors, from outside folks as well, in 5 years and 10 years, are people going to have 20 cards in their wallet? I have 300 cards personally, so I'm in an anomaly. But the average American has three, right? And I don't actually think that the wallet is going to get bigger, physically or metaphorically speaking. I think what's going to happen is consumers are going to have more choices of how to fill the two or three slots in their wallet with cards that speak to them more directly than they do today.
You have 300 cards.
I have 325 credit cards, something like that. Yeah.
Was this mainly for like just testing? Because like obviously it's good for your business to kind of know what everyone is offering, or what was kind of the thought process around that? That's, I mean, you're
Yeah.
probably in the record books there.
There's someone who has like 1,000 cards, so I'm not quite there yet, but I'm definitely up there, I would say. Today I get to call it work or opposition research, so I have a nice excuse, but I started applying for cards, the day I turned 18, practically, right when I was legally allowed to, and the kind of impetus was to get free miles. I grew up in New York, went to college out in California, and I wanted to fly back and forth as cheaply as possible, and airline points and miles I could get with these credit cards. So I sort of drank the Kool-Aid. My first job was working at the Points Guy, which was at the time, 8 or 10 people in a WeWork. It's now a very big company, but it was really interesting to see the cross section of marketing offers that brands and merchants are able to put forth, and the underlying technology that created that possibility in the first place.
Now, a lot of people that when they hear that are probably saying, okay, I know when I apply for a new card, it affects like credit score, right? Like
Hmm.
there'll be in many, there's the hard pull. So there'll be a
Yep.
slight decline, but then your overall credit goes up, which is also a benefit to the score. So I'm sure over time it just ends up evening out in like a relatively quick period. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak personally.
Hmm.
There's definitely a ding when you do a hard pull, and every time I apply for a card that happens, but it's usually over months and years made up for by having a better utilization ratio, having more available credit, and as long as you use your credit responsibly, it should go up over time. Now, one feature that we built at Cardless
Hmm.
is called soft pull. So when you apply for a cardless card on our products, are rolling this out right now, there's not going to be a hard impact to your credit unless you are approved and see that you can get this card. So you can click accept the offer, then there's a hard pull. But if you're not eligible, if you're not going to be approved, then we're not going to have a negative impact to your credit. So things like that help consumers control the narrative a little bit better.
And I think consumers really appreciate that. Like they're more likely to apply for one of your cards
Of
because of that,
course.
right? Because sometimes there's that, oh, if I apply, I get the hard pull. And then there's nothing worse, right, than applying, doing the hard pull, and maybe someone getting rejected. And it's like, well, because then they're not going to, the score doesn't go back up after, right? Immediately.
Yeah.
Now you don't have the additional credit. And, it's interesting.
Yeah. It's a double whammy.
I want to make sure we focus on this because you mentioned it early, and then we talked about it when it first came out. So you mentioned entering the small business space with an Alibaba co-branded card. Talk us through kind of how that process came to be, and what should our audience know about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, for those who don't know, Alibaba is like a $200 billion public company. They're a large conglomerate, very famous founder in China. His name's Jack Ma. And it started as like the yellow pages of China. There was sort of like at the dawn of the internet, like an online phone book. And that was Alibaba. And it's grown into now a payments company, e-commerce company. We're working with Alibaba.com, which is their e-commerce entity, and you can kind of think about them like Amazon for wholesale. So if you're a small business, if you're a mom and pop shop, a sole proprietor, a restaurant owner, and you want to import goods or merchandise as cost effectively as possible, you can go on Alibaba to buy those things. And today, there's no good credit card for spending on Alibaba. That platform sees about a third of SMB customers actually using personal consumer cards to buy goods rather than a small business card. So we teamed up with Alibaba and decided we wanted to build a financial product that really catered to that truly S of SMB, the small business, the mom and pop shop, the sole proprietor that needs either discounts on shipping, rewards, or potentially cash flow benefits. So one of the things we're doing on this card for the first time is 60-day terms. So when you buy something, we give you an extra month to pay off your bill, so that if you're selling your goods and inventory, you can get that revenue to pay the card and manage your cash flows better as a business. So that's something that's really important to us.
That's unbelievable. Because also a lot of times when you do buy something off Alibaba, right? If you're buying their clothing or other things, it's coming from China. It's not immediate that you're getting it, right?
It
So
takes a little while, of course.
yeah. So in the past, like it's not. We all become so accustomed to Prime, right? A little different with Alibaba, and it makes sense. That is a huge deal for the small business owners that are buying those products, because now that's going to give them a fair enough time to receive the product, market it, sell it before they have to make payment. So that's really cool that you did that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're excited for this benefit, and the card as a whole. I think Alibaba's got something like 8 or 9 million SMBs buying things on their platform in the United States today, and all of our business, just for clarity, is U.S. consumers, U.S. small businesses. So we really want to incentivize people to partner with brands and get closer to brands they already have a predilection to or loyalty with, and on the small business side in particular, solve a real need that they have in the market that no one else is addressing today.
So how does it work with Cardless? So you have the relationship with Alibaba, you create this co-branded card. A lot of people are probably saying you don't need to go into super specifics, right? But like what is the
Yeah.
kind of give me a quick overview of like how the business model works for you personally.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the kind of reason we exist, and I'll take you back to the founding of the company. I was working at Lyft. I was a data scientist there, and Lyft happened to be trying to launch a credit card. They picked Synchrony, which is the biggest co-brand bank in America, and the product never saw the light of day. There were a lot of challenges Lyft ran into that ultimately led them to scrap the project. And some of those learnings for us and for me personally led to the founding of Cardless. And we really wanted to kill that pain for our brand partners. It takes banks on average 18 months to launch a credit card product. We can do that in about 90 days, so way faster. We really want to build our products so they can be embedded in the brand's ecosystem. So think of going to your airline's app or Alibaba.com to sign up, and one day also to service your credit card. And then we want to do bidirectional data sharing. So help give our brand partners insights into their customers' worlds when they're outside of that brand's ecosystem, so they can better target and cater to their needs. So that's sort of why we came to be. With our brands today, we're a full service program manager banking solution. So we do things like underwriting, all the legal compliance aspects, all of the servicing of the card. We've got a call center out of Texas, which is 24/7. It's a really important part of our business to be as close to the end consumer as possible. And for our brand partners, what that means is they can focus on marketing and distribution. That's where we want them to spend their energy and time. Email campaigns, checkout ads, banner ads on their website, so they can use the relationship they already have with the end customer to introduce them to this product and bring them through the door. And then once we have them signed up, we kind of handle the rest.
Earlier on in the conversation, you were talking about really the co-branded cards that people are most familiar with tend to be the airlines, right? Because you can't go on a flight without them
Letting you know they
going on
have
the
a
loud,
card.
yeah, coming, and they work hard at it, right? They put it on the loudspeaker. They go row by row asking if you're interested. So, I would like to hear your thoughts on kind of the buzz around the regulation in the airline space and maybe how it's impacting those co-branded cards and rewards and things like that.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up here,
Yeah. So it's funny. I talked with an airline exec a couple weeks ago who was joking that people shake you awake on the planes to remind you to get the card if you don't have one. But it's because it's such a valuable revenue stream for them. I'll go back to that Delta Amex example. 11% of Delta's revenue last year was their credit card product, but almost 50%, 49% of their net income or profit. So it's the number one profit driver of those businesses, and it's a really important component of it for anyone in the travel, hospitality, and now e-commerce and retail ecosystem as well. There's a few different laws and regulations that are floating around. One is a second Durbin Amendment that would potentially cap interchange on credit cards. And there's also, a regulation floating around about increased extension of, expiration and also transparency around loyalty programs themselves. So just to state on the record, I think transparency, customer-friendly experiences is so important for financial services and anything that touches that, including loyalty programs. So I think the more regimented and clear and consistent each loyalty program is with how to earn miles, how to burn miles and points, that's a welcome change. That's really important. When it comes to Durbin, though, we saw that take hold in the debit space 10 years ago or over a decade ago when that was passed. And it completely ended rewards and debit cards. And if that were to happen in credit cards, I think the same thing would come true, where rewards would go down close to zero, like they are in debit today, and the merchants are just going to pocket that incremental revenue. They're not going to pass it back to the customer like they claim they would when the debit card and Durbin Amendment was passed. So there's some good stuff going on in Washington and some stuff that could potentially be problematic, and we're going to keep close tabs on both.
Michael, as we wrap up here, kind of this is still related to the business, but kind of a fun question I like to ask people. And I'm going to say one because I try not to keep it too open-ended. You just have to name one, but what's something that in the early days made you want to cry, but you can laugh about it now?
That's a good question.
It's
That's a good
tough.
question. Yeah. It still feels like early days today, and we made so many mistakes. And I think part of the entrepreneurial journey is just keeping at it, and that agility, that pain tolerance is really, really important. When we were getting started, our first customer that signed any term sheet with us was Manchester United. And we were two people in a WeWork. We hadn't raised much money at all. But they wanted to build a credit card so badly in the US that they said, if you can build this platform, if you can go build this company, we'll give you as much time as you need. We'll launch a card with you. And something that made me want to cry, and I now laugh about it, was it was a Friday evening. It was like 2019. It was pre-pandemic, and we do this classic sales pitch where we say, "Hey, I'm going to be in London on Monday morning. Let's grab coffee." And I still remember I was on an overnight train to Crater Lake in Oregon to bike around for the weekend. And just as I was losing service, I got this email saying, "Great, 10 a.m. Monday morning, let's meet at this place in Trafalgar Square in London." And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get from the middle of nowhere in rural Oregon to London? And I only have a bike and my phone doesn't have service. So there was that moment of angst and like all these things that we spent so much time building up to do, potentially being all for naught. Luckily, I took a red-eye flight. I biked to the airport, ditched my bike there in Redmond, I think it was in Oregon in Bend, and was able to get there in time. So I look back on that really fondly.
You left your bike?
I left my bike, but we won the deal, so it worked out.
Damn, so you probably didn't have much with you.
I had a backpack. I had to go buy a suit the second I landed on that Sunday in London. It was a fun experience.
The amount of people that this is even like, much like your several hundred credit cards, right? Like the not many people have gone through a situation like that. That is one that you will always remember. That story.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
Michael, last question for you as we wrap up here. What's next for Cardless that you can share with us here today?
Well, we just announced the Alibaba card and the entry into the SMB space, and we're going to focus a lot of time and energy onto that. So if you take only one thing away from this time, take this. We think in the future, brands will build credit cards that customers will want, and end consumers are not going to have cards from traditional banks, but from brands that they know, trust, and love. And Cardless is building the platform to make that transition easy and to support brands and businesses to do that transition, to build products that are, innovative and support the end customer. And we'll now do that both for individual customers, but SMBs as well.
I love it. Well, Michael, let's definitely stay in touch and we'll continue following along with your updates. But wishing you and the team all the best of luck, continued success, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.